The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. For 3,000 years, this massive chamber on the planet Nexus Prime had been filled with the voices of countless species, all talking, arguing, and making deals. But today, every delegate sat in silence, staring at the empty seats where the human ambassadors used to sit. Ambassador Zyrveth, a tall creature with thin wings made of something like glass, stood at the central platform. His job was to keep track of all communications between species. Right now, he looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. "It has been 20 standard days," he announced to the crowd. 20 days without a single message from any human world. Not one reply to our calls. Not one ship crossing into council space. Nothing. High Counselor Mirathex was the oldest and most powerful being in the room. Her species had created the council thousands of years ago. Back when humans were still living in caves on Earth, she floated in her special chair, her gray skin wrinkled with age, her eyes sharp with concern. "This must be some kind of mistake," she said. "Perhaps their communication equipment has broken down. Humans are not known for taking good care of their machines." Zyrveth shook his head slowly. "All of them? Every single human colony has gone silent at exactly the same time. 47 worlds. Billions of people. They have all stopped talking to us." A loud clicking sound came from the Crocian section of the hall. The Crocians were giant insects, as big as trucks, with hard shells and sharp claws. Their representative Clicktar made a dismissive gesture with his front legs. "Why should we care?" he asked. "The humans have only been part of this council for 60 years. They are babies compared to the rest of us. Let them have their little tantrum. They will come back when they get hungry." Some delegates laughed at this. Others nodded in agreement. But not everyone found it funny in the trade section of the hall. A blue-skinned being named Olak Van was frantically typing on his computer. He was the trade minister for the Sindari Federation, and his job was to make sure goods moved smoothly across the galaxy. Right now, his screens were filled with red warning lights. "This is not a joke," he said, his voice tight with worry. "In 20 days, we have lost access to 60% of our medical supply chain. Human factories made most of our basic medicines. They are gone now." "Find other suppliers," Clicktar said with a shrug. "There are no other suppliers." Olak Van slammed his hand on his desk. "We let the humans take over these industries because they did them better and cheaper than anyone else. We never built backup systems because we never thought we would need them." The hall erupted into noise. Delegates shouted at each other, blamed each other, demanded answers that nobody had. Mirathex raised her hand for silence, but it took several minutes before the chaos died down. Far away from Nexus Prime, on a space station orbiting Earth called New Chicago, a young woman named Katie Morgan watched the council's broadcast on her small television. She was 28 years old, brown hair tied back in a simple ponytail and tired eyes that had seen too much politics for someone her age. 6 months ago, she had been a translator for the human delegation to the council. She had spent her days turning alien languages into English and English into alien languages, trying to help humans and other species understand each other. It had been a good job. She had believed she was doing something important. Then the recall order came, and everything changed. "I still don't get it," she said, shaking her head at the screen. Her father, Pete Morgan, sat across from her at the small kitchen table. He was 65 years old, a retired cargo ship pilot who had spent 40 years moving goods between human colonies. His hands were rough from work, and his face was weathered from years in space. He held a cup of coffee that had gone cold long ago. "Give them time," he said. "Took them 60 years to figure out we weren't pets. Might take them another 60 to figure out they need us more than we need them." Katie pulled up a holographic document on her personal computer. It was a file that had been leaked to the public 2 years ago, a secret report that the council had written about humans. Right after first contact, she read parts of it out loud to her father. Species designation: human, intelligence level, moderate. Emotional stability, poor. Recommended approach: allow limited integration while maintaining strict controls. Long-term projection? Species will become dependent on Council resources and will pose no significant threat. Pete laughed, but there was no humor in it. They really thought they had us figured out. They thought we would be grateful for whatever scraps they threw us. Katie closed the document and looked at her father. Remember when I applied to the Galactic Academy? I had the highest test scores of any applicant that year, human or alien, and they still rejected me. I remember, said I wasn't ready, that humans needed more time to prove themselves, that maybe in another generation we might be mature enough for their precious academy. Katie's hands curled into fists. I spent my whole life trying to prove myself to them. We all did, and it was never enough. The door to their small apartment slid open, and Katie's older brother walked in. Danny Morgan was 35, tall and strong, wearing the uniform of the Earth's Defense Force. But something about his uniform was different today. The old patch on his shoulder, which had shown Earth surrounded by the Council's ring of stars, had been replaced. The new patch showed Earth alone, standing by itself against the darkness of space. News from command, Danny said. The Council is panicking. They have called an emergency session to discuss what they are calling the human situation. Pete snorted. The human situation. That is what we are to them. A situation to be managed. What do they want? Katie asked. What they always want. They want us to come back, to fall in line, to remember our place. Danny sat down heavily in an empty chair. But this time, they are scared. Really scared. Our intelligence reports say half their supply chains are falling apart. Their military is stretched thin because they do not have human soldiers anymore. Some of their agricultural worlds are already running low on food. And he thought about this for a moment. For 60 years, humans had worked harder than any other species in Council space. They had taken the worst jobs, built the best products, solved problems that older species could not solve. And the whole time, they had been treated like second-class citizens. What happens now? She asked. Danny looked at his father, then at his sister. Now we wait. We have spent 60 years begging for their respect. Maybe it is time to find out what we can do on our own? Outside the window of their small apartment, the lights of New Chicago Station glittered against the black of space. Millions of humans lived here, worked here, built their lives here. And beyond this station, scattered across 47 worlds, billions more were doing the same thing. For the first time in 60 years, they were doing it alone. And the galaxy was about to learn what that really meant. The Council's diplomatic ship, it's called the Eternal Harmony, hung in the cold darkness at the edge of the human solar system. By the old treaties, no alien ship could come closer than the orbit of Neptune without permission from Earth. That permission had not been given, Senor. Diplomat Thelvox stood at the window of her cabin. Looking at the distant of light that was the human sun, she had spent 30 years studying humans. She had lived among them, learned their languages, eaten their strange foods, watched their movies, and read their books. She had thought she understood them. Now she realized she had understood nothing. Still no response? She asked her communications officer, a young winged creature named Saren. We have been broadcasting on every frequency for 3 days. They are not even sending automated replies. It is like they have turned off every receiver pointed in our direction. Thelvox had warned the Council about this. 5 years ago, she had written a report saying that human patience was running out. She had told them that the Kepler Accord, which would give the Council control over all future human expansion, would be seen as the final insult. Nobody had listened to her. They never listened. She pulled up the historical files on her computer and began reading through them again. She had read them hundreds of times before, but maybe she had missed something. Maybe there was some clue that would help her understand what the humans wanted. The first file was the oldest. It was the original report written by the Crocian scout ship that had discovered Earth 200 years ago. The Crocians had stumbled upon the planet by accident while mapping new jump routes. They had spent 3 months watching humans from orbit. Before making their report, Thelvox read the key passage out loud to herself. Species shows high aggression and territorial behavior. Technology level is primitive, but advancing rapidly. Weapons development is unusually sophisticated for their overall progress. Recommendation: monitor and contain. Do not allow expansion beyond their home system until species demonstrates acceptable behavioral modification. In simpler words, keep them locked up until they learn to behave. The second file was from 50 years ago. It was the official council decision about human membership. Humans had finally been allowed to join, but with conditions. They could only settle worlds that the council approved. They had to pay special taxes that no other species paid. They could not vote on most issues. They could not serve in senior positions. The third file made Thelvox feel sick to her stomach. It was from 40 years ago, right after what humans called the Proxima Incident. A group of human colonists had tried to settle a planet that the council had not approved. Council peacekeepers had been sent to remove them. Something had gone wrong. 300 humans had died, including many children. The council had called it a tragic accident. Humans had called it murder. There were more files. The medicine embargo. When the council had withheld treatment for a plague that was killing millions of humans on colony worlds. The trade restrictions, which made it nearly impossible for human businesses to compete fairly. The education ban, which kept humans out of the best schools and universities in council space. 60 years of insults. 60 years of broken promises. 60 years of being told that they were not good enough, not smart enough, not civilized enough, and humans had taken it. They had smiled and worked harder and tried to prove themselves, until now. Back on Earth, in a small farming town in the middle of what used to be called Kansas, an old man named Howard Miller sat on the porch of his wooden house. He was 93 years old, with white hair and hands that shook slightly when he lifted his coffee cup, but his eyes were still sharp. His mind was still clear. His granddaughter Lily had driven for hours from the city to visit him. She was 26, with her grandmother's red hair and her mother's stubborn chin. She worked as a language expert, one of the best on Earth, specializing in alien communications. "Grandpa, are we doing the right thing?" she asked, sitting in the chair next to him. Howard was quiet for a long time. He watched the sun setting over the wheat fields that his family had worked for 5 generations. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but steady. "I was 33 years old when the aliens made first contact," he said. "I remember watching it on the news. Everyone was so excited. We thought it was the beginning of a new age. We thought we were going to learn so much from all those ancient civilizations out there." He took a sip of his coffee. "My father died that year. Heart attack. The doctor said there was nothing they could do. 10 years later, I found out that the council had medicine that could have saved him. They just did not think humans were worth sharing it with." Lily reached over and took her grandfather's hand. "I spent my whole life watching them look down on us," Howard continued. "I watched my children get rejected from schools they deserved to attend. I watched my grandchildren get turned away from jobs they were qualified for. And every time we complained, they told us to be patient. They told us we had to earn their respect. And now I am tired of earning anything from them." Howard squeezed his granddaughter's hand. "Sometimes you have to walk away from people who do not value you. Even if walking away is hard. Even if it is scary. Because staying with people who treat you badly is worse." Lily thought about her own experiences. She had applied to the Galactic Academy of Languages 3 times. Each time, her scores had been better than any alien applicant. Each time, she had been rejected. The official letters always said the same thing. Human applicants were evaluated on different criteria. Different standards, lower standards, they meant, because humans could not possibly be as good as everyone else. "Do you think they will ever change?" she asked. Howard looked up at the sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. Somewhere up there, the eternal harmony was waiting for a reply that would not come. "I think they might have to," he said, "because for the first time in 60 years, they need something from us, and we are not giving it to them." On the eternal harmony, Thelvox finally gave up trying to understand the humans. She walked to her communications console and began recording a message for the council. "High Counselor Mirathex, this is Senior Diplomat Thelvox reporting from the edge of human space. I have been here for 3 days. The humans are not responding to any of our attempts at communication. I believe they are serious about this withdrawal. I do not think they are coming back unless something fundamental changes in how we treat them." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I have studied humans for 30 years. I have told you many times that they are different from other species. They do not think the way we do. They do not forget the way we do. Every insult, every broken promise, every unfair law, they remember all of it. And they have been remembering for 60 years. She took a deep breath. "I recommend that the Council prepare for the possibility that humans will not return to our alliance. I recommend that we begin developing plans to replace human contributions to our economy, our military, and our infrastructure. And I recommend that we do this quickly because based on what I have seen in the past 3 days, we are not as prepared for life without humans as we thought we were." She ended the recording and sent it off into space. Then she went back to the window and stared at the distant human sun. For 60 years, the Council had treated humans like they did not matter. Now they were about to find out just how wrong they had been. 3 months had passed since the humans went silent, and the Galactic Council was falling apart in the great trading markets of the Sindari Federation. Merchants were screaming at each other. Prices for basic goods had doubled, then tripled, then gone even higher. Things that used to be cheap and easy to find were now rare and expensive. Medicine, machine parts, computer chips, even simple tools. All of them were running out. Trade Minister Olakven had not slept in 4 days. His blue skin had turned pale gray, and his hands shook as he looked at the latest reports. Every hour brought more bad news. "The medical supply situation is critical," his assistant reported. "We have maybe 6 weeks of basic antibiotics left for the entire Federation. After that, people will start dying from infections that should be easy to treat." "How did this happen?" Oleg Van asked, even though he already knew the answer. "Human factories made most of our medicines. They did it better and cheaper than anyone else. We shut down our own factories years ago because we could not compete with human prices. On the agricultural world of Verdi 7, the situation was even worse. This planet fed billions of people across dozens of star systems. Its massive farms stretched from horizon to horizon, growing crops that had been genetically modified to resist disease and pests. Those modifications had been designed by human scientists, and without human support, they were starting to fail. Governor Plexera, a round creature covered in soft fur, walked through fields of dying plants. The leaves were turning brown and falling off. The fruits were rotting before they could be picked. The insects that the modifications were supposed to stop were eating everything in sight. "How long do we have?" she asked her chief farmer. 2 months. Maybe 3. After that, we will not be able to feed ourselves, let alone anyone else. Can we get human help?" The farmer laughed bitterly. "We spent 30 years telling humans they were not smart enough to be real scientists. We blocked them from our universities. We stole their patents and gave them nothing in return. Do you really think they are going to help us now?" In the military headquarters of the Council, admirals and generals were having secret meetings. They spoke in whispers because they did not want regular soldiers to hear what they were saying. "Our peacekeeping forces are down to 60% strength," Admiral Vorks reported. "Human soldiers made up a huge part of our ground forces. Without them, we cannot maintain order in half of our territories." "Then recruit more from other species," General Krath suggested. "We have tried. But other species do not fight like humans do." Admiral Vorks pulled up a combat analysis on his screen. "Humans are strong, fast, and they do not give up. They keep fighting long after any reasonable creature would surrender. It takes 3 soldiers from any other species to do what 1 human soldier can do. So we recruit 3 times as many. There are not enough volunteers. Most species do not want to be soldiers. Humans were the only ones who joined our military in large numbers, and we treated them like dirt the whole time they served." The conversation died, and the room fell silent. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. Back on Nexus Prime, the council chamber was in chaos. Delegates shouted accusations at each other. Some blamed the humans for leaving. Some blamed the council for driving them away. Some blamed each other for not seeing this coming. High Counselor Mirathek sat in her floating chair, watching the madness with tired eyes. She was over 1,000 years old. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had guided the council through wars and plagues and disasters of every kind, but she had never seen anything like this. Ambassador Krodak of the Valoran Empire was the loudest voice in the room. His species was known for solving problems through force, and he was demanding that they do the same now. "We must send our fleet to human space," he shouted. "We must show them that they cannot simply walk away from their obligations. They signed treaties with us. They must honor those treaties, and if they refuse," Zyrveth asked, "then we make them refuse." Krodak's hand dropped to the weapon at his belt. "They are one species against 800. They cannot possibly win a war against all of us." The chamber erupted into argument again. Some delegates supported the idea of using force. Others were horrified by it. A few sat quietly, doing math in their heads and not liking the answers they were getting. Mirathex finally raised her hand for silence. It took several minutes, but eventually the noise died down. "We will not attack the humans," she said firmly. "Not because we are too weak, but because we are not fools." Krodak started to protest, but Mirathex cut him off. "I have been reading the intelligence reports that Ambassador Thelvox has been sending us. In the past 60 years, humans have quietly built defensive systems around every single one of their colonies. They have stockpiled enough food and supplies to last for decades. They have created backup systems for everything they need to survive." She let that sink in before continuing. "They planned this. Maybe not this exact situation, but something like it. They knew that someday they might have to cut themselves off from us, and they prepared for it. While we were busy congratulating ourselves on how much we controlled them, they were getting ready to leave." "Then what do we do?" someone asked from the back of the chamber. Mirathex was quiet for a long moment. She was thinking about all the reports she had ignored over the years. All the warnings about human unhappiness. All the suggestions for reform that she had dismissed as unnecessary. "We do something we have never done before," she finally said. "We ask them what they want, and then we listen to the answer." On Mars, in the shining capital city of New Olympus, President Sophia Reyes was holding a meeting of her own. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. A former ambassador who knew exactly how the council thought. "They are panicking," reported her Secretary of State, Nathan Cole. He was a quiet man who had spent 20 years working in human-alien relations. "Our intelligence says they are running out of options. Some of them are talking about military action." "Let them talk," President Reyes said calmly. "We have been preparing for this possibility for 40 years. Our defenses are strong. Our supplies are secure. Our people are united. What about negotiation?" Asked General Linda Vasquez, the commander of Human Defense Forces. "They will come to us eventually. They have no choice." Reyes looked around the table at her advisors. "But when they do, things will be different. We are not going to beg for scraps anymore. We are not going to accept whatever crumbs they offer us and pretend to be grateful." "What do we want?" Nathan Cole asked. Reyes smiled, but there was steel behind that smile. "We want them to admit what they did to us. Not quietly, not privately. We want them to stand up in front of the whole galaxy and say that they were wrong, that they treated us unfairly, that they broke their promises and lied to us and held us down because they were afraid of what we might become. They will never agree to that," General Vasquez said. "Then they will learn to live without us." Reyes stood up and walked to the window. Looking out at the city her species had built on a world that was supposed to be impossible to colonize. "We are done trying to earn their respect. From now on, they can earn ours." The space station called Crossroads floated in empty space, far from any planet or star. It had been built 200 years ago as a meeting place for species that did not trust each other. The walls were plain gray metal. The air was recycled and smelled like nothing. Everything about the station was designed to be neutral, to give no species any advantage over another. Today, Crossroads was hosting the most important meeting in human history. The council had sent their most important diplomats. Delvox was there, the expert on human behavior who had been ignored for so long. Zyrveth was there, the communications specialist who had first reported the human silence. and High Counselor Mirathex herself had come. The first time a sitting. A counselor had left the capital world in 50 years. The human delegation was smaller, but no less impressive. President Sophia Reyes led the group. Secretary of State Nathan Cole stood at her side. General Linda Vasquez was there to show that humans could defend themselves if needed. And a young advisor named Marcus Webb had been included. Because he had been born on a colony world and knew what life was really. Like for humans outside the Earth system, they all sat around a round table in a room with no windows. The lights were bright and even. There was no sound except the soft hum of the air recyclers. Mirathex spoke first. As tradition required, the Galactic Council wishes to express its sincere desire for peace and cooperation with humanity. She said through her translator, "We understand that there have been problems in our relationship. We are ready to discuss solutions to these problems." President Reyes listened politely. She understood the alien language perfectly well, having spent 15 years as an ambassador, but she waited for the translation anyway. It gave her time to think. "Problems?" she finally said. "Is that what we are calling them? We acknowledge that certain policies may have caused difficulties for your people. The Council is prepared to review these policies." Reyes reached into her pocket and pulled out a small data chip. She placed it on the table between them. This chip contains information about 4,327 separate incidents where Council policies directly harmed human citizens. Not small difficulties. Real harm, deaths, destroyed businesses, families torn apart. Would you like me to read through them one by one? Mirathex's face did not change, but something flickered in her ancient eyes. That will not be necessary. We are prepared to discuss compensation for past difficulties. We do not want your money. Reyes pushed the chip toward the center of the table. We want acknowledgement. We want you to admit publicly and officially that the Council treated humanity unfairly from the very beginning. The room went very quiet. Thelvox, who had studied humans for 30 years, felt her hearts beating faster. This was exactly what she had warned the Council about. Humans did not forget. And they did not forgive easily. "That is a significant request," Mirathex said carefully. "It is not a request." Reyes leaned forward, her eyes locked on the High Counselor. "It is the minimum requirement for us to continue this conversation. If you cannot give us that, then there is nothing more to talk about." While the leaders talked in the main room, junior members of both delegations had been placed together in a smaller room down the hall. Katie Morgan, now promoted to senior translator, found herself sharing a table with Saren, the young winged communications officer from the Eternal Harmony. They sat in uncomfortable silence for a while, neither sure what to say. Finally, Katie decided to break the ice. "Can I ask you something?" Saren's wings moved slightly, a gesture that Katie had learned meant openness. "Of course, do your people actually believe in the Council? And what it stands for?" Saren was quiet for a moment. "My species joined the Council 800 years ago. We were young and hopeful. We believed in the promise of peace and cooperation between species, and now I am not sure what I believe." Saren looked down at the table. The Council was not always like this. In the beginning, there was real cooperation. But over the centuries, it became something else. A way for powerful species to stay powerful. A tool for keeping younger species in their place. Like humans. And before you, there were others. Species that asked too many questions, or grew too quickly, or challenged the old ways. Most of them are gone now. Some left the Council. Some were destroyed. Some just faded away. Katie thought about this. And your people never spoke against it. Some of us did. But the Council moves slowly, and those in power do not like to share. Saren's wings drooped. "I have read the reports about how humans were treated. I want you to know that not all of us agreed with it. Many of us thought it was wrong, but you did not stop it." "We did not." Saren finally looked up, meeting Katie's eyes. "And that is something my species will have to answer for, whether we like it or not." Back in the main negotiation room, the talks had reached a critical point. The council had offered many things that humans had asked for over the years: full voting rights, equal trade terms, representation in military leadership. Each offer was larger than the one before, and President Reyes rejected each one. "Still do not understand," she said after the latest offer. "We are not here to bargain for privileges. We are not here to negotiate a better deal. We are here to find out if you are capable of treating us as equals. Real equals, not equals on paper while you continue to look down on us in practice." Mirathex was losing her patience. She had ruled the council for 300 years. She had negotiated with species that made humans look like children. She was not used to being told no. "What would satisfy you?" she demanded. "Name your terms." "I already did." Public acknowledgement that the council was wrong. An official apology for 60 years of mistreatment. And a complete restructuring of our relationship. Not as a member species under your authority, but as an independent power that chooses to cooperate with you. You want to leave the council entirely? We already left. What we are discussing now is whether we will ever come back, and what that return would look like. Mirathex sat back in her chair. For the first time in centuries, she did not know what to say. The humans were not following any of the usual patterns. They were not begging. They were not threatening. They were simply stating what they wanted and waiting for an answer. "Why?" she finally asked, her voice quieter than before. "Why are you doing this now? You have been part of the council for 60 years. Why leave now?" Reyes was quiet for a moment, considering the question. "So we finally realized something," she said. "We spent 60 years trying to prove ourselves to you, trying to earn your respect. And no matter what we did, it was never enough. You always moved the finish line. You always found new reasons to keep us down." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "We stopped trying. We walked away from everything we had built in your space. We gave up partnerships and contracts and relationships that took decades to develop. And do you know what we found?" Mirathex shook her head slowly. "We found that we did not need you as much as we thought we did. We found that our colonies could survive on their own. We found that our people were actually happier without the constant reminder that they were second-class citizens in your galaxy." Reyes smiled, but there was sadness in it. "We found out who we really are. And now we are not sure we want to go back to being who we were before." The room fell silent. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Mirathex did something she had not done in 300 years. She lowered her head in a gesture of respect. "I think," she said slowly, "that we have much more to discuss." The negotiations at Crossroads Station lasted for 6 months. There were days when it seemed like everything would fall apart. There were nights when delegates screamed at each other across the table. There were moments when both sides walked away, sure that peace was impossible. But they always came back. They came back because the alternative was worse. In the end, they created something new. Not a return to the old relationship, where humans were junior members of the council with limited rights. Not a complete separation, where humans and aliens never spoke again. Something in between. They called it the Parallel Compact. Under this agreement, humans would not rejoin the Galactic Council. They would remain independent, governing themselves according to their own laws and traditions. But they would cooperate with the Council on matters of shared concern. Trade would continue, but on equal terms. Defense agreements would be honored, but humans would not be required to send soldiers to fight other species' wars. Scientific knowledge would be shared, but humans would receive credit for their contributions. It was not perfect. Both sides had to give up things they wanted. But it was fair, and fairness was something that had been missing for 60 years. On the day the compact was signed, President Sofia Reyes and High Counselor Mirathex stood together on the observation deck of Crossroads Station. Through the windows, they could see ships from 100 different species flying past in a carefully planned display of unity. "You know, this will not be easy," Mirathex said quietly. "There are many in the council who did not want this agreement. They will work against it." "I know," Reyes replied. "There are humans who feel the same way. They think we should have asked for more, or that we should have stayed independent forever." "Then why did you agree to this?" Reyes watched a human transport ship fly past the window. It was small compared to the alien vessels around it, but it flew just as straight and just as proud. "Because isolation is not the answer," she said. "We prove that we can survive on our own. But surviving is not the same as thriving. Humans need challenges. We need new frontiers. We need other species to learn from and compete with and argue with. We are better when we are part of something larger than ourselves, but not as subordinates. Oh, not as subordinates. As partners." Reyes turned to face the ancient alien leader. The old relationship was broken. It was built on the idea that you were better than us, that we had to earn our place at your table. That was never going to work. Humans do not accept being looked down on. We push back. We have noticed. There was something like humor in Mirithex's voice. This new relationship is different. It is built on the idea that we are equals. Different. Yes. We think differently. We act differently. We see the universe differently. But equal in value. Equal in dignity. Equal in the right to determine our own future. Merithex was quiet for a long moment. She was thinking about all the species that had come and gone during her long life. Most of them had eventually accepted their place in the Council's order. They had become comfortable, predictable, safe. Humans would never be safe. "Your species frightens many of my people," she admitted. "You grow so fast. You change so quickly. In 60 years, you went from primitives who had barely left your home planet to a power that could threaten the stability of the entire Council. Some wonder what you will become in another 60 years. Or another 600. "So do we," Rhea said with a slight smile. "That is part of what makes being human interesting. We do not know what we will become. We just know that we will keep trying to become better." Far away from Crossroads, on Earth, in the small town in Kansas, Howard Miller sat on his porch one last time. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. His granddaughter Lily sat beside him, holding his wrinkled hand. Howard was 94 years old now. His body was failing him, and he knew he did not have much time left. But he had lived long enough to see something he had never expected to see. They signed it, Lily told him, showing him the news on her small screen. The Parallel Compact. Humans are equals now. Howard smiled, and for the first time in many years, the expression reached his eyes. "Not equals," he said softly. "We were always equals. They just finally admitted it. What do you think happens now?" Howard looked up at the darkening sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. Somewhere up there, human ships were flying alongside alien vessels. Human scientists were working with alien researchers. Human traders were doing business with alien merchants. Not as servants or second-class citizens, but as partners. "Now the real work begins," he said. "Building something new. Something better. It will not be easy. There will be problems and fights and days when it seems like the whole thing is falling apart. Do you think it will last?" Howard squeezed his granddaughter's hand. "I think it has a chance. And sometimes, a chance is all you need." In the months that followed, things began to change across the galaxy. Slowly at first, then faster. Human businesses reopened in council space, but now they set their own terms. Human students enrolled in alien universities, and this time, they were accepted on their merits. Human representatives attended council meetings as observers, respected visitors rather than humble petitioners. There were problems, as Howard had predicted. Old prejudices did not disappear overnight. Some aliens still looked down on humans. Some humans still resented the years of mistreatment. Negotiations that should have been simple became complicated. Agreements that should have held fell apart. But they kept trying. Both sides kept showing up, kept talking, kept working toward something better. President Reyes served 2 terms before retiring. In her final speech, she said something that would be remembered for generations. "For 60 years, we asked a simple question. What do we have to do to earn your respect? And for 60 years, we never got a satisfactory answer. So we stopped asking. We walked away. And in walking away, we found something more valuable than their respect. We found our own. She paused, looking out at the crowd of humans and aliens who had gathered to hear her speak. The Parallel Compact is not a victory. It is a beginning. The question we ask now is different. We no longer ask what we have to do to earn respect. We ask what we can build together. And the answer to that question, I believe, will take us further than any of us can imagine. On the observation deck of New Chicago Station, Katie Morgan watched the ships come and go. She was older now, a senior diplomat who had helped negotiate the compact. She had seen the worst of both species and the best of them. Her communicator beeped. A message from Saren, who had become something like a friend over the years of negotiation. The new cultural exchange program has been approved, Saren's message read. Young Volanthi will be coming to Earth to study. Young humans will be going to our homeworld. It is a small step, but it is a step. Katie smiled and typed a reply. Small steps add up. That is something humans have always understood. She put the communicator away and watched a human freighter dock at the station. It was loaded with goods that would be traded across a dozen alien worlds. Not because humans were desperate to prove themselves, but because trade benefited everyone involved. That was the new relationship. Not perfect, not easy, but honest. And honesty, Katie had learned, was the foundation of everything good. Outside the station, the stars stretched on forever, full of mysteries and dangers and opportunities. Humans and aliens alike would face them together now. Not as masters and servants. Not as superiors and Einfer, as equals, and that made all the difference.